Not seem like the UFO conversation is slowing down in Washington, and tonight a bombshell report that shows the topic is really not going away anytime soon. Dozens more of government UFO whistleblowers have come forward to share information about UFOs to Congress, the Pentagon, and the inspectors general. UFOs were once really a taboo topic, but it's now a pretty serious issue. A report by Public reveals at least 30 whistleblowers working for the federal government or government contractors have given testimony or a protected disclosure to the Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General, the Defense Department Inspector General, or to Congress over the last several months. They've come forward with statements reportedly similar to UFO whistleblower David Grush, who first spoke to NewsNation.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And even UFO skeptics like Mick West, who's also been on this show, note the importance of more people coming forward. He said, quote, "It'd be very interesting, more people saying the same things independently makes it more likely to be true." But Inspector General Thomas A. Monheim denied investigating these UFO claims, writing, "As a matter of discretion, ICIG notes that it has not conducted any audit, inspection, evaluation, or review of alleged UAP programs within the responsibility and authority of the DNI that would enable this office to provide a fulsome response to your questions." Dozens of whistleblowers giving testimony is not evidence of extraterrestrial life, and it's likely not part of a U.S. government disinformation campaign, though no one really knows for sure. That's part of the problem. It's part of a growing conversation about what's out there. The report follows the federal government quietly releasing a bunch of new videos that supposedly contain UFOs. And I don't know if quietly releasing these things is a step in the right direction, but it's better than nothing, that's for sure, because nothing from the government has definitely fueled distrust. The lack of transparency is something Dan has brought up on the show before. And now with dozens of government UFO whistleblowers allegedly giving testimony and a bunch of new alleged UFO videos coming out from the federal government, from CBP actually, they're the ones who released it, Border Protection. What happens now? Joining me is Michael Shellenberger, the investigative journalist who published that Public piece today. Michael, thank you for being with us. Really incredible reporting that took this to the next level for us to now know that 30 more whistleblowers have come forward and spoken to the Pentagon or to the Inspector General or to Congress. Do we have any indication of what they've said?
Hey, good to be with you, Brian. Yeah, I think it's an interesting story we did today. We spent a lot of time on it, a lot of time working on it, interviewed a lot of people, multiple sources, more sources even than my previous story. And pretty persuasive that really at least dozens of people have come forward as whistleblowers. They are making claims that are as dramatic as the claims that Grush made to Congress and also to NewsNation. The basic story of there being a crash retrieval program, reverse engineering program. As we point out in the story, we're not saying that this is proof of extraterrestrials or non-humans. We also point out that there has been government disinformation, including claiming that there are extraterrestrials, not just in dismissing reports. And we point out that there's actually still a lot of secrecy and that there's resistance to more openness. You mentioned the Inspector General of the intelligence community, Thomas Monheim, had said to Congressperson Burchett and Luna that they were not doing an audit or kind of looking into it in a letter that made it sound like they were not investigating. But one of the sources for our article pointed out that he did not say that they were not doing an investigation. And that may seem like semantics, but actually it refers to a very specific part of the job, which is to do investigation. So they could be doing an investigation, but not really being open or transparent about it. So, I think if this is a social contagion, which is definitely a possibility, or if it's disinformation or if it's something else, there's still a lot of secrecy and still a lot of people pushing to keep this a secret, which ironically just makes people more curious.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.